This is Josh Friedman coming to you from Oxford, England. It is a very interesting and I would say a bizarre election day in the United Kingdom. And to discuss that, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Daniel Palin. Daniel, how are you doing?
Hi there, good afternoon. Well, it's a gorgeous afternoon here in Oxford. So this election is very, very interesting. It's completely different to any previous election that we've had, any European election at any rate.
And just to start off, so the viewers are clear,
right.
Today is the day in which the British are voting in the European parliamentary elections, correct?
That's right. So today everybody is voting for their MEP, the people who will represent them in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, sometimes Brussels, depends on what day it is that they're meeting on.
And this is just a recap for the general audience. This is particularly odd because at least entering this year, the UK was supposed to be out of the EU by now, correct?
That's right. The deadline was on the 29th of April. It is now the 23rd of May, at the end of May, which also the end of Mrs. May's premiership, although people have been saying this for a long time.
So, by the way, what is the latest news on that regard?
Well, the latest news is the same that it's been for a few months now. We've had a string of resignations, and, Mrs. May's leadership is under threat. But this is particularly interesting because last night, following the announcement of another vote on this deal, on the deal that was negotiated with the EU between the British government and the European Union, Andrea Leadsom decided to resign, right? And Andrea Leadsom is the Speaker of the Commons, right? So she was basically one of the most important and most powerful figures in Mrs. May's cabinet and a strong supporter of hers. So it's a tough situation for our Prime Minister.
And it appears that she is on her way out as Prime Minister. But we don't know when.
This has been the case for almost a year now. For months and months and months, we've had votes of no confidence against her, against the government. Her deal has been voted down several times. Once it was like by a record amount. It was like the biggest defeat in history, basically.
Okay, so let's get back to today. Today is the first of 4 days, correct, across Europe, across the EU, in which countries are voting for their European members of Parliament.
That's right.
And what is the significance, generally speaking, of this vote at the EU level, not specifically here at the UK? What are the implications? What gets decided by these European elections?
What gets decided is, the proportion, which parties are going to be more or less represented in the government, in the European Parliament, which will therefore determine the direction in which the EU will go in, which will be very interesting, given that Eurosceptics are expected to, gain a lot of seats across the continent, right? Across the continent. So it's going to be quite interesting just to see this dynamic play out. Once we get the results, right? We don't know yet. It could be that the results are something completely unexpected. But, everyone's saying the same thing, so they can't all be wrong.
Speaking of Eurosceptics, there's a very prominent one here in the UK. Well, there are probably more than a few, but one by the name of Nigel Farage, whose district we're currently in. Is that the case?
We are in the southeast region of the UK. So the UK, for the purposes of the European elections, is divided into 12 regions. One of them is the southeast. And this is where Mr. Farage this is his base. This is his base. Of course, I don't think he's been to Oxford. And I don't know
why would that be? Why would he be against going to Oxford?
I don't know if he'd be against going to Oxford, but I think Oxford would be against him visiting, right? Because Oxford, after Cambridge, was the most Remain supporting city in the country, right? And for understandable reasons, right?
It's like,
there's
just for the viewers, a quick glance, you don't see it so well, but we are beside multiple colleges, right, within the Oxford University.
at least 3. So on the far left is Christ Church College, where famously, the dining room scenes of the Harry Potter film were filmed, and many prime ministers and powerful people went there. That's Christ Church, just here. Here, I believe it's Nuffield. I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on that. But it's another nice.
It's okay,
college.
but nonetheless, you're saying Oxford is very much pro-Remain.
Yes.
And this is a pretty liberal
Yeah.
area of the country.
There are several reasons for this. One is the huge foreign population here. Especially given that there's not just one university; there are 2 universities in this city. There's Oxford University and Oxford Brookes, and universities generally, not only do they have a very international student base, but their staff will be very international, right? So we have all these researchers from all over the world, all over Europe as well. Not only that, but it's very dependent on lots of EU grants for various research projects that are performed here. Not just at the university, but for instance, until recently there was something called JET, the Joint European Torus, which is a pan-European project to research nuclear fusion, right? Which is something very exciting. Not only that, but you also have the Mini factory here by BMW, which is probably the city's biggest employer, and of course, Mini is a cultural landmark here, but also it's the fact that it's owned by BMW. I think that being in or out would have some impact on the operations here.
All right, well, let's get back to election day and the campaign leading up to today. So Farage was probably in the news for a whole variety of reasons, but
Yes.
one of which was he was conveniently hit by a flying milkshake.
Right.
What happened with that? And I guess there were other politicians and candidates,
Yeah.
particularly on the Brexit side,
That's
who
right.
were hit by milkshakes as well.
So he was at the moment the count is 4 people have been milkshaked. Mr. Farage was the 3rd. The other 2 to be milkshaked were Mr. Carl Benjamin and a man by the name of Tommy Robinson. That's not his real name, that's the name he goes by.
Benjamin is a famous YouTuber who goes by the moniker Sargon of Akkad.
Right, so they were both milkshaked. I think it started with Tommy Robinson, who was following a man around the street and asking him lots and lots of questions, which the man obviously did not appreciate. And since then it's developed into its own thing, right? Including what? Which is why Carl Benjamin was later milkshaked, as it were. And
was milkshaking a thing before this campaign? Is that part of British politics, milkshaking people?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is completely unheard of, I think, anywhere in the world. Politicians have been egged here. That's a very common practice and quite normal. Egging people.
But why is that? It doesn't seem like a very British thing to do, to be egging people.
Why is that? Sometimes you need to express yourself. You can't defenestrate people. You can't throw politicians you don't like out the window anymore, so you have to do something. People threw eggs. Now, this man threw one milkshake, and it's the new thing. It's the new thing. I think this is how symbols develop, right?
Okay, so let's talk about a little split between these milkshaked politicians and candidates. Farage was known for years as being the UKIP guy, the UK Independence Party.
Yes.
Right? But now he's leading the Brexit Party. What is the Brexit Party, and how did that come about, and where is it polling, and how's it expected to fare in this European election here in the UK?
So this is probably the most unusual part of this whole election. The two parties currently leading are two parties which have never led historically, right? Not only that, but you have two new parties, two new high-profile parties, right? One of them being the Brexit Party, and the other is Change UK. So, what's the difference? So the two new parties are Change UK and the Brexit Party. Change UK didn't get very far. Now, the Brexit Party, quite remarkably, on a single policy, has captured the imagination of the nation, I would say. Right?
That policy is
Brexit.
What, finishing off Brexit or what?
Is to leave at all costs, it seems.
Okay.
Right? Even if that includes no deal, because that was the will of the people, which is the slogan people run by. The next most popular party, in another remarkable twist of faith, is the Liberal Democrats, right? Who, they're just saying bollocks to Brexit. They want to stop Brexit and so that we can focus on other things, actual issues that this country is facing, such as 0-hour contracts or food banks and all sorts of other social issues which effectively have been ignored in the last 3 years, right? So this, and then next down you'd expect to see the Conservative Party, but after them you have Labour, I believe, and then the Greens, and then finally the Conservative Party.
And the
Right?
Conservative Party is the party, the Tories, who are in power right now.
They're currently in power.
So we have this bizarre scenario in which the party in power
Right.
in the country is polling at what, like sixth or I don't know, what is it?
If fifth, they're in fifth position with less than 10% of the vote. This is also completely unprecedented. The Conservative Party is usually either leading or behind Labour, right? So this is a complete, turnaround. We're not living in normal politics. These are not normal times.
Now is this
All bets are off.
Is this reflective? Let's just step over here a second as we've got a crowd coming through. Is this reflective of broader changes in UK politics, or is this maybe just a symptom of not many people caring about the European elections, or what's going on here? Why do we have these new parties
What's going on?
that are
So
trumping the old ones?
Historically, the European elections were something considered to be rather inconsequential, right? Which didn't gather much enthusiasm, much noise, much anything. Now, with Brexit, with the rise of nationalist parties across the continent, people are paying more attention because we're expecting fundamental change in one direction or another. We don't know what, because something has to give. People are not happy, right? People are not happy. So either we're going to have what some people are expecting, which is a breakup of the European Union. Other people are expecting reform. Wide, fundamental reform in the way that it operates, because it's not a perfect system, and people are not happy. And they need to be made happy somehow, right? What direction to go in is anybody's bet. Anybody's bet.
So you see what's happening here in the UK, actually, even though the UK is formally voted to leave and other countries obviously haven't.
Right.
You see what's going on here as very similar to what's going on across the continent.
Now,
Or at least in some countries. Is that the case?
in a way, yes. Because people are unhappy. People are unhappy because there's a rapid change. Society is changing, right? And you have, for the first time ever, basically, people who are in full-time employment who can't afford to live, who have to supplement their income by benefits. This has never happened before, right? Or the gig economy suddenly being a thing. People can't afford to rent anymore. People are forced to share, which never happened. So there is this shift in society that people are not happy with, right? And which is why they're going for these nationalist parties. They want to be they want to send a message. A lot of people, rather than believing what they're being told by some of these parties, they want to send a message to the establishment. They want to tell the establishment, we're not happy, something has to give, something needs to change. The issue is how to change and what, when, how. Well, now is the time, but what to change? That's the debate. That's the question.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, or maybe we'll continue on with that question and that debate in future segments. Just to wrap things up, Daniel,
Right.
Anything you'd like to plug? I guess I can tell the audience you've worked with me on the FreeManPost
That's right.
website, and you've got some articles up there.
Yeah.
Anything of yours you'd like to plug?
Yeah, no, so check out my articles online. I used to have a more active YouTube channel, but just
Maybe
keep an eye
you'll
out.
become more active on this channel.
I will probably become much more active. Get back on the journalism wagon.
You're a global citizen.
More or less.
So really quickly, why not throw it in there? You've lived a nice chunk of your life in Oxford.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So you're here right now because
Because my polling station, I'm here to vote. I'm not going to say who I'm voting for. I hope I didn't give too many clues into who I was voting for. I tried to be as neutral as possible.
you've been pretty neutral.
But my polling station is near my home, which is on the outskirts of the city, in a small village in the outskirts of the city, where I will cast my vote, because I wasn't organized enough to be able to get a proxy or do it by post.
All right. Well, the EU says this time it matters. So hopefully something does matter about what you're doing.
They say every time it matters. I've never voted before, so obviously it does matter to me.
Well, you've come a long ways. At least, we took a train from London, but that's another story for another day. Thank you for joining me on this. Thank you for filling in the viewers about the interesting and rather bizarre developments
Thanks for listening.
here in the UK, and let's collaborate some more in the near future.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, signing off from beautiful Oxford with Oxford University in the background. Goodbye for now from Oxford.